Hello, everyone. So sorry for the inconvenience. We are having lots of technical difficulties today. Not only do we have a different Zoom link for everybody, we're having technical difficulties with getting the PowerPoints up and loaded. But you know what? We're professionals, and Laura is amazing and knows all about Day of the Dead. So make sure you take notes and, ask her lots of questions. So please welcome Laura Cano, who's going to talk to us about Dia de los Muertos. Welcome, Laura.
Hi. So, Dia de los Muertos, that sounds kind of creepy, doesn't it? Day of the Dead and stuff. And then what day is it today? Halloween, right? So everybody thinks, oh no, it's the Mexican Halloween. Well, no. And I think it's because it's become such a cultural kind of with the skeletons and all this thing, and people are getting a little confused. So Day of the Dead means that it is a day of celebration. It really isn't Halloween. We don't go and ask for candy on that day. It's not, and I think even Disney has done a whole thing on Day of the Dead, right? But it is traditionally a Mexican uh, tradition. It's not in all the Latin countries. It's basically started in Mexico and it started by the indigenous people, actually. So when the conquerors came over to, oh, there's the PowerPoint. Do you see the PowerPoint? Great. Um, I don't know how to, you can scroll it. I guess I don't have access to scrolling it up or down. But pretty much Day of the Dead is November 1st, which is tomorrow, and November 2nd. So tomorrow is the beginning of Day of the Dead, and usually November 1st is the celebration of those that have gone, uh, have passed away. But first, the November 1st is for the children. So if somebody had a child who had passed, it would be that day that they would celebrate their passing. And it's not about celebrating their passing, it's about really remembering them and stuff. So what we do is what we call building an altar. And the altar is, um, it sounds kind of weird, right? And you say, oh, it's an altar, it's kind of religious and stuff. Well, not really. It really doesn't have a lot to do with religion. It has to do with that family honoring that person who has passed. So the altar, I think I prefer the name not altar but ofrendas, which means an offering. So it is believed that on that day, and it is also the reason people think that it's a religious holiday is because it also falls on All Saints Day, right? But when the people were when the Spaniards were trying to convert all the indigenous people in Mexico to Catholicism, they found that they were celebrating this day, and it also landed on All Saints Day. So they kind of combined it, and they said, "Oh, okay, well let's just join in a celebration, and that way we can celebrate their culture and still invite them into Catholicism." And so that day, All Saints Day, is mixed up with Day of the Dead, but really, what the indigenous people were doing were celebrating those who had passed, and it wasn't a sad celebration. It was kind of a really joyful celebration. It was like, oh, we get to remember these people the way they lived, the way they were, all the things that they love, and that is what the offering is about. So you have these different elements on the on how to build the altar or ofrendas, and it starts with the ground, right? And you want to lay all the marigolds in the ground. And why do you want to lay marigolds? Well, because in Mexico, where we celebrate mostly by the indigenous people, marigolds in this time are the flower that's blooming. So the marigolds were gathered and they were picked and they were laid on the ground as a pathway, kind of a lighting of the way, so that when those who had passed that were coming back to celebrate with us on that day could see and find their way into our hearts, into our homes. And so you would lay down this path of marigolds, and you see them in the altars a lot. I don't know if you could um, do on the PowerPoint. There's other pictures of not that one. That's me. Hello, and you could do one more there. Uh, and that just kind of goes into there. You can stop there. So the altars, and you can see how these elaborate altars are built. So you have the earth, which is where you start with the altar. Then you set up this table, and on the first level of the table is where you place those photos. And I think that we already do that. We built these little altars at homes of grandma or maybe an aunt or an uncle or someone who has passed away that was dear to us. We usually have a picture and we have a little trinket next to it. That's kind of what that next level is. And it's really about putting these great images. I love old photographs and we love to look at them and see them and say, oh my gosh, look how they were dressed, look how beautiful she was, look at all these things, right? So you would place these kind of images that you would put down for the person that you wanted to honor on that day, their pictures. And then on that same level, you also want to put down other things, their favorite foods. There's always food, right? You want the person that is returning in the celebration of that day to come by and see their favorite foods. So if they liked, mole is usually what they put out, but they like tamales or enchiladas or something you want to like. Come on in. This is your favorite food, and guess what? You're not supposed to eat the food. It's for them. Okay, so people would pick at it. Don't do that and stuff. And then you see those beautiful, elaborate, gorgeous little sugar skulls, right? And you think, oh, those are scary. But those were made especially for the children so that they wouldn't be afraid. So it was this candy, right, that was there that they could look at and say, oh my gosh, these gorgeous skulls that are decorated, and you saw them, you know, um, on those beautiful are made out of sugar because they wanted to celebrate and make the children not afraid, right? Not afraid that this was a spooky altar, a spooky offering, or something like that. And then the next level, uh, on that same level, you also wanted to put things that were important. Okay, so things that you would always put into the are the four elements, right? Earth, wind, water, fire. Earth, we know that that's where you would lay the marigolds. The wind, have you seen the paper papel picado, which is that paper that is decorative and stuff? Well, that is always at an altar because you want that to represent the wind, right? The wind, and it's beautiful, and they're flying in the air, and it just reminded them like, come on in, come welcome these people. And so that would be the wind element. You would always put a glass of water because it's a long trip. They might be a little thirsty, so you want them to have something to drink and stuff. And then the fire are the candles. You're lighting the way. They see the marigolds, they see the light of the candles. It's a welcoming return to the place that their relatives are at, right? And it's not an actual, like they don't actually show up, but it's kind of a representation of like if they were to show up, they would have all the things that they love. You would put they were basketball players, you might want to put a basketball. If they love certain things, it's all represented that there. So it is, what a wonderful day of spending the day collecting all these items that your loved ones, you know, are remembered. You would go into a drawer and say, oh, this was grandma's favorite shawl, or this was grandma's favorite earrings, and let's put out, and the stories would develop. Oh, yes, I remember when she would wear this shawl, or when she would wear this earrings. And it's a way of sharing, right? It's a way of remembering these people that have moved on. And it's a beautiful way of including the entire family in celebration. What better way to be spend the day than to be remembered, right? By those items that you would place there. The next item, and you would see that there's like marigolds and kind of an arch. Sometimes it's an arch, sometimes it's like a window. The next level up would be where the marigolds are. You decorate it, and it's usually in an arch because it represents the passing through, the going through one from earth to the heavens and returning, right? And so you would make these beautiful arches that you could see uh, the representation of heaven on stuff. So you would hang things on it, not only flowers. And I mean, sometimes it doesn't have to be this elaborate, but piece of, some of these altars can be the most beautiful things you could imagine, because people spent all day doing this. And they also would spend day at the cemetery, and they would picnic at the cemetery. And I think that's kind of different, right? But it was a day that they would go with their families, spend day at the cemetery, at the place, at the burial place. They would clean it. They would pick up all the weeds. They would put stuff around it. And if you think, that's kind of a really nice way of honoring, right? You don't want to go that let that place go to, you know, look bad. You want it to look beautiful for them, and it's a good way to also maintain, right? I think it was very clever. It's a good way of maintaining the plot at the cemetery. And I know these things sound really weird, right? Cemetery, the plot, the altar, and all those things, but it is it's really a different point of view, right? I think I love it because um, when my mom passed, we didn't build uh, an altar for her on the first year after she had passing, because it was still kind of sad for us. So we didn't really want to be crying or sad. You want it to be a celebration. So it took a couple of years before we started to be able to build an altar and remember. So sometimes people rush into building these things because maybe their parents or an aunt or a friend has passed, and it happened, maybe 6 months ago or a year ago. And it really is about when the family is ready to celebrate and remember these people in the most glorious way, in the most joyful way. It's really what this is about. A place that you can go and look at altars here in Houston is if you go to 19th Street in the Heights. There's a place called Casa Ramirez, and they have these beautiful altars set up, and you can actually see them in person and see how elaborate they can get, um, how beautiful they can become, because they become these beautiful um, displays of love. And one of the things that you can see at the Casa Ramirez is it's the different interpretations from family to family, right? You can see how people would interpret it differently. Some people would have, lots of candy, or maybe lots of flowers, or maybe lots of candles, or whatever is important to them to reconnect with those people who have gone uh, past. But Casa Ramirez not only has all the things that you can build an altar with, it also has altars already set up that you can come and look at. And this weekend would be a perfect time. Um, Day of the Dead is It's unusual that it lands on a weekend, but how great that it lands on a weekend this time, and you can actually enjoy it. Um, there is also lots of celebrations around town that you can look at. I think Discovery Green has some altars going up too. It's become a more um, accepted uh, place, and I know that everybody dresses up and they get in a mask, um, and the people that are dressed as Catrinas, which is um, the large hats and the painted faces, and can get really elaborate. So if you have an opportunity to go to either one of the parades that is happening this weekend, or go into places that is having the altars, it really is quite a sight to see and stuff. In the Mexico City, uh, if you ever have a chance to go to Mexico City in this time of the year, you would be blown away by the great parades and the great celebrations and the creativity behind this. It really is quite amazing and quite beautiful. One of the things I didn't mention is that one of the things that goes on the altar too is they call it's pan de muerto, which is bread of the dead, right? And you can buy it at like Arandas or one of the other Mexican bakeries, but it's a specific kind of bread that is made. It's not very, very sweet, but it represents this time of the year, and you can go and buy that bread. It's one of the things that you would put into the altars, um, especially it's made for this time of the year, which in Mexico right now it'd be a little bit chilly. So you would have your uh, cup of hot chocolate and your pan dulce or your day of the dead pan, and you would, enjoy and be together with your family. It's quite joyous and stuff. I'm going to stop and see if anybody has any questions.
I was asking where you get the bread around here because I haven't had it a long time and it was so good when I did have it. And so I'm
Yes.
glad you answered that. And why
Yes, and now
miracle?
more and more bakeries, um, uh, even ones that may not be just Hispanic, do carry the bread. You can go to La Michoacana, HEB might have it at
Oh,
Mi Tienda,
oh, okay.
and there's several now Mi Tiendas. There used to be one in Pasadena, and I think there's another one. Uh, I'm not
There's
sure.
one off of I-45.
Yes, yes, that's another one. And so you can go in there in this time of year and find it. And sometimes they're not very big. They're smaller. They make them smaller. In Mexico, they make them a lot bigger. The the funny thing about it, because I would always say, why would you put salt when it's looking at is why would you put salt in? But it's a tradition, and I think that even when you're cooking, you see people throwing salt over their shoulder and stuff. And it's always because the
Good luck.
people thought, okay, if the devil was chasing you or something evil was coming after you, you would throw salt behind over your shoulder so that you would blind whatever was coming for you and stuff. But you see that also. That one of the You also see people burning copal, which is the incense. And if you've never uh, smelled copal, copal is actually the resin of a tree, and it smells kind of really earthy, and you smell it sometimes in churches, and that is also a celebration because all of this is about enticing all the senses, right? To welcome these our loved ones back. It's enticing every sense, smell and taste and everything you can imagine, um, to be able to do that. And how do you do that? Foods and smells and uh, everything that is joyful. You can do that. Um, Here's you can see one of the interpretations of Day of the Dead and skulls and things like that, which is you find so many more before. Uh, Before there wasn't a lot of interpretation of the Day of Dead, but now I think as people are celebrating more this day, and because it falls so close to Halloween, um, people have embraced it more, and you'll see a lot more people dressed up or dressed as painted as skeletons, and some of these outfits and designs can be so amazing, right? And I am so happy that whatever part of town that you live in, I guarantee there's some celebration happening right now and stuff. So I would encourage you all to run out there and join in and see what that is about. And maybe it's still not too late to set up a little
Altar.
altar, a little ofrenda, and it doesn't have to be that elaborate, really. It really is, what is it that you want to remember? And it doesn't really have to be so technical that it has to have these levels and it has to be exactly like this. It really is about a personal um, interpretation of how you want to remember that loved one and stuff, and be joyful about it, loving it. Uh, because um, I think as we we start to learn more about each other's cultures, we start to understand each other a little bit more and stuff. And this is one of my favorites, and I know it's become a lot of people's favorites also. Uh, Wherever part of the country you're at and things. I've been to different parts of the United States, and I'm always surprised who is willing. I did a presentation in Washington State on Day of the Dead, and I was like, really, Washington State? We're going all the way to Seattle and we're doing this? And but it was very interesting to them. And I did one in Tennessee too. I was like, okay, we're doing, but it's because wherever there is enough Latinos, enough, and it does bring people together, and uh, it opens the conversation of like, what are they doing? Is that voodoo? Is that jump? What is it they do it? But it's an opportunity to educate and to say this is really not about you know the Ouija board or voodoo or black magic. It really is about uh, a very simple uh, way of remembering those who have passed
We
and
do
stuff.
have another question.
Okay.
It asks, can you use one altar for multiple loved ones?
Yes, yes. And that's a great question because you can do a community altar. So they're called community altars. So say you want to put up one in your, you know, community or neighborhood or at your school and stuff. Everybody, everybody can contribute, right? You can bring your own photograph of someone that you want to honor, someone you want to remember. And sometimes, it's okay that it's maybe not a relative, but somebody that you admired. Maybe it was, you know, a performer that you really loved, or, um, maybe it was somebody in your community that has passed on, right? Maybe it was a community leader, or it was the neighbor who always brought you cookies, or whoever. It really is a way to really get together and enjoy it as a group, as and talk about each other, and kind of make it a kind of a little Day of the Dead party. But I think I want to be remembered that way. I want people to remember and bring things over and say, "Hey, remember she was this or she was that. She painted or she did ceramics or whatever it was," and then to share it with other people, and then other people to share their stories too.
There was a
And then,
follow-up question.
okay,
Says, the person asked, can you use an altar for multiple people, loved ones, but even if your loved ones walked completely different paths of life?
yes, yes, it really is. I think it's a time that you don't. have to even think of things like that. It is um, a celebration. So I've seen altars where they said, "Well, my father, might have had." This is going to sound really weird, but uh, my father had a drinking problem and stuff. But we're leaving some, tequila here for him because, you know, and it's okay to remember the faults of it because I don't think any of us are perfect, and it's okay to remember them however you can remember the stuff. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I think it does. Ah, so so I was doing multiple things while you were presenting. Did you talk about the procession that some towns or neighborhoods do through the street too? I think
Well,
they
it's that they're doing parades, right? They do
parades now. Okay.
parades and stuff, and they might start February. I'm not sure what is going on with the city of Houston right now, but I know that in the past they've done a huge parade, right? And all these nonprofit organizations or companies or personal communities have put together, just like you would do a Thanksgiving parade, their own little float, their own little interpretation, their music. And I know that in Mexico, when they do these parades, if it's locally, they start one maybe at the cemetery, or maybe they start at the houses and then end up at the cemeteries, right? So it is a procession going to everybody joining in, everybody celebrating, everybody joining in and walking to the cemetery. In smaller communities, in smaller towns like throughout Mexico, you would only have one cemetery. So everybody would go down the main street and everybody would join. They would know that this is the time everybody would go out there and they would be at the cemetery, and then everybody would join in. Every household would join in and walk the procession to the cemetery or to the church. It didn't have to necessarily. Sometimes the church was behind the church. There was usually the cemetery, so it kind of coincided with, they could have um, a mass, they could have something going on in the church and then at the cemetery at the same time. But I think now with the bigger cities and stuff, it is just become more of the celebration, more of the of everybody joining in, getting dressed up. Um, and I've seen some of the floats that have come here through the university, through the Houston, city of Houston, and it would be, a nonprofit, maybe remembering somebody that contribute to the nonprofit, and they were celebrating that person. Um, it can be interpreted any way you want to. Are there more questions?
no, but I can keep asking questions. So why marigolds? Is it because it's this time of year or
So mostly in this time of year, and especially because the celebration really started more. So I'm from the border of El Paso, and our celebrations weren't as elaborate as they were maybe as you went further into Mexico, where there were more indigenous communities, smaller towns. Um, and so the marigold at this time is the one that grows the most throughout Mexico. You see it everywhere. You see it. It's the climate, I think. It's not. And you kind of see it here. It's a fall flower. It's that orange, beautiful fall flower. And so it's very easy to get right now. And in some communities, they grow huge, not these tiny little marigolds that sometimes we find here, but these huge marigolds, and they would have fields and fields. So this was the flower that was more available at the time. And it coincides also with the idea that when you lay the marigolds down, when you lay the petals of the marigolds down, or the entire, it does light the way. It does have this glow, this beautiful color that you would put down on a path.
Does anybody else have a question, or I can keep asking because I have one more question.
Okay, go ahead.
In your opinion, oh, Aubrey, I'll let you go first. Aubrey?
I just have more questions about the altar. So once you set up your altar, is it like bad luck or anything to move it, or is it okay to like set it up and then take it down, set it up and take it down kind of
So,
thing?
so you would set it up at this time, and some people would leave it like a month. It's kind of like the Christmas tree, right? Some people keep it up way past, right into this January and stuff. It is really a personal. Um, you decide. Most of the altars were built in their homes. So if it was a community altar, maybe at a church or at a community center, maybe they would take it down within a week, put it up for the week of Day of the Dead and or begin 2 weeks prior to that and then take it down, 2 weeks after. It really is a personal decision as to when you want to build it. Some people keep it up year round because it is in their homes, so they'll keep it. I mean, you wouldn't keep the food or some of that other stuff on it, but you would keep the basics, which is you could have the water changed or the salt but the main things would be the photographs and the items that you would place on the altar. So it's a personal choice as to if you have it at your house, keep it at your house as long as you want to. If you had it at a community center, I think you probably wouldn't keep it up more than a couple of weeks.
Thank you for clarifying because I have some friends who are spiritual and they keep theirs up all year round.
Hmm.
So
And
that's
that's
why.
kind of cool, that they can celebrate year round.
Now I'm intrigued to make me one. Thank you for all the information.
And you don't have to get so elaborate, it starts small. I think it's like everything else as you learn more about it and you think more about that person or people uh, that you want to celebrate. You kind of start to end up gathering things and gathering stories.
Right. Thank you for clarifying. Now it all makes sense. And I thought my friends were doing some weird stuff. I'm like, my picture better not end up on there. But thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions? Well, my final question is, like, in your opinion, do you think the movie Coco brought a lot of awareness to Day of the Dead?
I think it did in a sense that it made it more palatable. I think,
Mhm.
in that, oh, if they can make it into a cartoon, how can it be spooky, right? How can it be scary and stuff? Because I know Coco was not at all scary. It was kind of very celebrating and things like that. But it also, mm, Disney had a
As
interpretation of it.
Disney does.
But I think it's like in everything else that you do. But I think that it got the conversation going and that it made it easier to talk about because eventually, we're all going to die. And that sounds kind of morbid. And why do we say it sounds morbid? Because it's the truth or we don't want to think about it. But how, um, how, how you celebrate, how you remember those that have gone on that uh, keeps them alive, right? Keeps them in our memories. It's tradition. It's legacy. It's being able to know where you come from. Uh, and sometimes we forget to talk about where we come from. And it's kind of cool to call, like, say, this was your grandfather, this was your great grandfather, your great uncle, or this was an aunt, and look at all the things she did, or this was an uncle and he lived all over the world. And, these stories I think, are important in recognizing who we are, our own identity, right? And I know that we're losing the ability to talk to each other about our history. Sometimes we don't know our histories, where we come from. And the more that we know about our history, we know where we come from, we know what kind of people we come from, what they did, what their struggles, or what great things they might have done. It just reassures us as our own identity as to who we are and what we can look forward to and be proud of our heritage. Does that help?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions for Laura? Well, I want to thank you for coming and sharing this wonderful tradition with us and sharing your knowledge. And we really appreciate it. And I hope y'all have a wonderful weekend and celebrate tonight's, Halloween. And then y'all can go and remember your loved ones and relatives over the next couple of days and create altars or ofrendas. Now that you know more about it. So thank you for coming and in doing this for us. And hopefully we will work with you again soon.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to maybe be able to sit down and we can build a small altar.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
that would be
like,
great.
you can always do what they call shoebox altars,
Oh,
which is in a shoebox, and you can pull it out every Day of the Dead, or you can keep it. It's small enough that you get all the idea of how to build an altar.
oh, I love that. I
I
love
like
that.
that too.
It would be fun.
That would be great. Well, I'm going to let you go and
Mhm.
say goodbye to everyone. And thank you all for
Thank
coming,
you.
sitting through all of the technical difficulties we had today and coming and making this a wonderful time to share. Thank you, everybody. We will see you at our next event. Bye.
Okay. Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ms. Laura. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.